Partner with eMarketer on our data-driven marketing materials. Our custom reports give eMarketer Media Solutions clients the opportunity to generate new category insights through original surveys and analysis. If you feel inclined, you can head to eMarketer.com/advertise to learn more.
With that being said, I think that, obviously really strong advertising growth, depending on how you look at it, it's great for, a nascent public company. But at the same time, this is a company that's been around for like 2 decades. So, depending on how you look at it, that's either good or bad.
Hey gang, it's Monday, August 19th. Danny, Jeremy, and listeners, welcome to the Behind the Numbers Daily and eMarketer podcast. I'm Marcus. Today I'm joined by 2 gents. Let's meet them. We start with our Senior Director of Briefings. He is based in New York City. His name is Jeremy Goldman.
Hey, happy Monday. Great to be with you.
Hey fella, we're also joined by one of our analysts who writes for our marketing and advertising briefing. He is based same place. Is that true?
I am also based in New York.
He is in New York, yeah. One day I'll learn. It's Daniel Konstantinovich.
Hello, good to be here.
Hey fella. Today's fact. You can see stars as they were 4,000 years ago with the naked eye. Put another way, without a telescope, all the stars we can see lie within about 4,000 light years of us. That means, at most, you're seeing stars as they were 4,000 years ago, so around when the pyramids were built in Egypt. So when the pyramids were built, we're seeing what stars looked like then because of how long it takes light to travel to us.
And they might not be there anymore, right?
They might not. They're
That's
probably
true.
not
They
there.
might not be there anymore.
Yeah, we have a few years left before the end of the world.
Can we get some new stars? I mean, what is going on?
I thought you were going to say some new facts of the day.
Oh, no. Yeah, this
We had
fact
this
of
one
the day
before?
stinks.
Can we get some new facts? Come on. Come on.
It
yeah.
took a really long time.
No, that's a good one.
Can we get some new stars?
we get a new host?
Oh my goodness.
I think that
It's anarchy.
the stars thing really
Don't
blows
ask
my
that,
mind.
Yeah, isn't that shocking? I don't think we can get some new stars, Dad. I don't know how that works.
It's a time machine.
All right. Anyway, speaking of time machines, has anyone watched Back to the Future recently? If you
No,
haven't,
I haven't.
don't. The storyline's insane. That movie should stay where it was.
I'm still waiting for my flying skateboard, by the way. It's like it was supposed
know.
to be here 9 years ago.
Yeah. You want a flying skateboard, Daniel wants new stars. You ask too much, gentlemen. Anyway, today's real topic, the other social media guys. All right, today we're talking about the other guys in social media, those smaller players that are important for advertisers, but don't account for a significant portion of their budgets. Let's start. So we're talking Pinterest, Snapchat, and Reddit. We'll start with Pinterest. And we'll start with Pinterest because they're the largest slice of the US digital ad pie of the folks we're going to talk about today. So they have a 1% share. Doesn't sound like a lot, but it's multiple billions of dollars. I think it's like $3 billion. And it's good enough for 10th place on the list. So it's ahead of a bunch of people, but it's also behind a bunch of people. So we'll start with Pinterest. Danny, you're actually noting, because you cover their earnings, in Q2, money-wise, Pinterest grew revenue 21%. To reach 854 million. User-wise, they grew 12% year on year, reaching 522 million monthly active users. Jeremy, I'll start with you. How do you rate Pinterest's recent performance?
I mean, I think it was actually pretty good. It's really hard to hold against a platform the fact that it just is that much smaller, right? Because, ultimately, like if you get your revenues up 21% year over year, how do you rate that as a quarter where things aren't going well, where you were able to get monthly active users up, your ARPU, which is a major factor when looking at the health of an average platform. I mean, a lot of things are going right if you just kind of accept the fact that this is going to be a much smaller platform in general.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the fastest growing as well. I think it's like the 4th fastest growing social network by ad revenue, behind only TikTok, Reddit, and Instagram. So smaller platform, but growing really fast.
And yet, the stock of the company dropped pretty sharply after this earnings report. So despite the fact that they, grew more than 20% in revenues and 12% in daily active users, this was considered a miss by a lot of investors.
Any theories as to why?
Well, Jeremy said that what more can you expect from a platform that is that much smaller? And I think we should say who it's that much smaller than, which is Meta, which is a company like the sole social media company really in this earnings season that exceeded expectations and performed really, really well.
And they're about 20 to 21 times smaller. For context,
yes,
right?
Yes.
And about 23 times smaller than what Google makes in ad revenue. So, Jeremy, I think you made a really good point. We were talking before the show. There's the phrase that gets thrown around, second tier social media players. And you were saying, I don't know if anyone is at the second tier level, like once you get past Facebook, Instagram, and Google, it's a pretty big drop off. And so really it's more of a third tier.
There's
situation.
that significant chasm, right? And that is, another key factor is all these platforms that we talk about, they're pure plays. They don't have something like a cloud segment that is achieving massive revenues to offset the fact that, Pinterest grew revenues roughly the same amount as Meta off of a much, much, much smaller base. So it's a little bit hard to get, super excited about that. I'm guessing if you're an investor, but that's why I'm not an investor. And I just try to be like an analyst and look to see like the ad potential of each of these platforms.
So, Danny, to go back to you for a second, because just so context here, Google's 26% share of the pie, Meta's 21%, that's Facebook, Instagram, obviously. Amazon now at 14%. So, they're getting up there to the point where we're now talking about the triopoly and justifiably. Microsoft then is in fourth place, and it goes from 14% Amazon to 4%. Microsoft, and they're in fourth place. And then you got TikTok, Apple, et cetera, et cetera. You get down to Pinterest at 1%. So yeah, going back to the reasons why the stock drops, why do you think folks aren't as bullish, despite the fact that they grew, 20% year on year?
It's a good question. I think it's that, despite the fact that revenues grew, that it has a strong foothold with Gen Z users, and, it's a very shoppable platform, which is appealing to advertisers. There's a lot of room to grow to catch up to something like Meta, but it's going to be very hard for them to do that just because of how big the gap is and how, huge and established Instagram and Facebook are. I think investors want the gap to close, and there's not really a path maybe to close it as rapidly as they may want. What do you think, Jeremy?
That's what I was going to say is that how do you close the gap if you're a platform like Pinterest? Because anything novel or interesting that you do to close that gap, even slightly, Meta is really good at saying, hey, that's a great idea. Let's try to do it better or our own way. And we saw that with Reels. We saw that with Stories years ago. So I don't know why you wouldn't see that here. And I think that that's a challenge for like the Pinterests of the world, the Snaps of the world.
Yeah. I mean, Jasmine Emberg, who covers social for us, she always reminds us that people are using different platforms for different things. And so it is hard when we compare these players to each other, because what you would do on Pinterest is not what you would do on Twitter or X or what you would do on Instagram or TikTok, etc. However, advertisers look at them as where the audience is, where can I spend my money, where is it going to pay off the most? I mean, Dan, you touched on something quickly there, which I want to revisit, which is you were writing in a piece recently, Gen Z users, Pinterest's fastest growing consumer demographic, which is positive. Our numbers support that as well. We expect Pinterest to add 2 million Gen Z users this year, and the second largest cohort, millennials, will add a few 100,000 folks. However, the Gen X and the boomers, we expect them to lose a few 100,000. So they are relying more and more on the Gen Z folks for that growth. Let's move to the second player here. So Snapchat, they have a 0.7% share of the US digital ad pie, which lands it in 12th place, a few spots behind Pinterest. Money-wise, they grew revenue 16%. That's a huge swing from posting -4 the same period a year ago, so -4 to +16 in a year. User-wise, they reached 432 million DAUs, daily active users, adding a healthy 10 million. It's a little bit less than last Q2. Jeremy, what stands out to you the most when it comes to Snapchat?
I think one of the things that I was looking at with Snap was just to see, they were trying very much throughout last year to create novel advertising experiences and lean into AR, particularly in store with some partners. And, they had to pull back from that. And the ultimate thing that, what I see with Snap is, yes, there's a lot of interesting international growth. There's a really nice Snapchat Plus story about getting people to subscribe for features that you can't get anywhere else or to get them slightly sooner. So all those things are really nice. But ultimately with Snap, it is I don't want to say primarily a messaging platform, but it is a little bit different because of that, and messages are private and generally they're considered to be like unmonetizable space, by most platforms. So I think that that's the issue is with Snap, it's just less monetizable inherently. And as a result, that does kind of keep it significantly smaller with less room to grow unless they find novel ways to innovate elsewhere.
Yeah. I mean, circling back quickly to international growth story points, it really is. I mean, North American daily active users has hit a ceiling. It's been stuck at 100 million for the last 2 years. Luckily, they're able to squeeze more out of those folks. Average revenue per user in the region is up 12%, so that's a positive. But Europe has barely budged. North America's flat. You're getting 9 million new people from the rest of the world of the 10 million that they added. So it really is becoming more and more reliant internationally. The Snapchat Plus story is interesting. Snapchat Plus subscribers, you pay money, you get some extra features. That continues to be a bright spot, growing to 11 million, up from 9 million a quarter ago. Danny, what jumps out to you when you think of where Snapchat is today?
Yeah, I think everything Jeremy said is spot on. I do think that the Snapchat Plus story is really interesting. They've managed to gain 11 million subscribers for Snapchat Plus, which is a really big gain since the service launched, although maybe growth is slowing down a little bit because it was 9 million in Q1 and now it's 11 million. But it is a pretty big success story for a company that's trying to diversify revenues, which I think is a push that a lot of these, second tier social media platforms are trying to do.
I mean, X is trying it, right? They try to get people to sign up to X with the paid version, and it hasn't gone nearly as well as Snapchat. So,
well, I think I might have even told you my theory about that, which is that Snapchat, for people who subscribe to our forecasts and look at them religiously would know Snapchat is the youngest, right? Of course. Yeah, it's the youngest platform. It's younger than TikTok. And for that reason, I think it's a lot of people putting it on their parents' credit card.
Yeah, the part of the problem, and I'll dig into the demographics here for a second, but part of the problem for Snapchat is users as a share of all social network users is falling, according to our forecast. So 80% of Gen Z social network users use Snapchat. We think that's going to fall, though, to 75 million. Not the millions, not the total, but in terms of the share of social network users who are on Snapchat, we think 80% today, 75% in 2026. That's for Gen Z, so falling 5 points. We expect millennial share to fall 2 points from 44 to 42. Gen X will also fall from 16%, and boomers are kind of flat. So there's no age group, unfortunately, for Snapchat where they are growing their share of the social network pie. And Jeremy, to your point, they're still relying a lot on those younger folks, which are harder to monetize a lot of the time.
I just want to add that, like with Pinterest, this is a company that saw a big revenue swing, like you said, Marcus, and yet the stock went down more than 20% after the earnings came out. So this was received really poorly by investors.
Patience wearing a bit thin.
Yeah, I think the fact that like both of these companies had big revenue growth and yet were kind of punished in the stock market doesn't bode well for the next company that we're going to talk about, since they are even further behind.
Yeah, let's do it. Reddit is the final one. They have the smallest slice of today's three companies at 0.2%. So that puts them in 21st place on our list of US digital ad players. So looking at how they've done recently, they made just over $250 million in the quarter. That's up over 40%. The company has 91 million daily active users. So there's a ton of folks, it's a big user base. Jeremy, what's your take when it comes to Reddit?
Well, I think that there's a lot here. First off, one of the key things that I'm looking for, not just from this quarter, but really going forward, is how much is advertising part of their overall pie, is like data licensing, because remember, they went public at a time where people realized that their content really was the product in some ways, right? They have so much information in there. They, signed a licensing deal with Google. They are probably the most protective out of any platform in terms of data scraping from their content. So is that going to become a more meaningful portion of their overall revenues, the licensing of that data over time? But that being said, I think that, obviously really strong advertising growth, depending on how you look at it, it's great for, a nascent public company. But at the same time, this is a company that's been around for like 2 decades. So, depending on how you look at it, that's either good or bad. And again, this growth is coming off of a minuscule base in relation to like what, base we're talking about with Meta.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. To your point, Jeremy, about what portion of the pie is ad revenues, it's a huge portion. I mean, Reddit had 281 million in revenues in this quarter, and 253 million of that was ad revenue, and other revenues were 28 million. The ad revenue jump was significant. It was 41%. So it shows that, they're attracting advertisers to some degree. These new ad initiatives that Reddit has put out since going public are attracting some attention. But, if Pinterest and Snap are not even in a second tier of social media platforms with around $1 billion in revenues, there's like a canyon between them and Reddit at 280 million in this quarter.
Yeah.
That just shows what a huge gap they have. There are a lot of really interesting aspects to this company in earnings. They have a lot of logged out users they reported. So, presumably these are people who are coming to Reddit through like a Google search because they're featured prominently at the top of Google results. Mm-hmm. And the challenge for Reddit is how do you get those people to log in, to spend more time on the platform, and how do you monetize those users? Right now, it seems that they're struggling to answer those questions since average revenues per user were only up 2%.
I'm so glad that we didn't practice this, but Danny, this is something that I think that I think we were talking
hours,
right, for hours and hours. That Reddit grew quite a bit in terms of time spent.
Yes.
Yeah. So more than a lot of platforms. And I think that that's something that is worth, paying attention to. Here, I have the actual numbers here. Reddit this year, we forecast the average time spent per day to go up 11%, with US adults, 1.3% for Instagram, and then Facebook, TikTok, X, and Snapchat are all going to be negative. So if Reddit can continue that growth, I think that there's a lot of opportunity for some strong contextual advertising that can grow their top line revenue.
They're going to need to prove our forecast wrong, though, because we don't expect that number to keep going up. It has gone up, and they're getting close now in terms of time spent to some of those bigger players, Facebooks and Instagrams and folks. I think about 30 minutes a day, but we don't think that's going to continue. So they've had a great year, Jeremy, to what you're saying, with 11% growth versus Instagram's 1% in terms of time spent, and Instagram's in second place. So they need to make sure they need to attempt to continue to grow that time spent number. But Danny, circling back to what you were saying, average revenue per user at just 2%. Part of the problem is they're adding revenue, but they're also adding users to add revenue. And so they aren't able to squeeze a lot more, barely anything, out of those existing folks. Snapchat, by contrast, grew average revenue per user up 6%. So maybe that's a big part of what investors are looking at now is it's all good and well to grow the numbers, but per person, what does the dollar figure look like? All right, gents, that's all we have time for today's episode. Thank you so much for hanging out today. Thank you to Jeremy.
This was fun. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. Thank you to Danny.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Thank you. He doesn't mean that. 2 hours ago, I forced him to be on the episode. He had no idea he was supposed to join, but he did anyway because he's a fantastic person. So thank you, Jeremy. Thank you to Danny. Thank you to Victoria, who edits the show. Stuart runs the team. Sophie does our social media. And thanks to everyone for listening in to the Behind the Numbers Daily and eMarketer podcast. Tomorrow, you can hang out with Rob Rubin. He is the host of our banking and payment show, eMarketer podcast, where he'll be speaking with Tiffany Montez and Maria Elm, all about what the bank will look like in 2030.